I was delighted to be invited to speak today because often engagement with small business can be lacking in the sense that policies are made, and we're very, very involved and keen to actually make sure that we are heard. And there's a very complex area, as Yolanda knows. There's so many diverse small businesses, it's very difficult to generalise about them. But when I started doing some research, which actually led to a paper, which was quite handy actually, because I got interviewed on the World Today yesterday, so equal pay is a topic that people care about. And like everything else, we really have to make waves, make it an issue. I think it's a bit like board diversity, that the business case for equal pay needs to be spelt out a bit more clearly. It's actually true that it leads to more productive organisations. Retention of staff is important, and building staff loyalty. One of the biggest problems amongst organisations is businesses is other people poaching your staff. So equal pay in the business case is something we need to articulate more clearly. So just in terms of where it starts, it was very interesting, that Westpac survey, which showed that girls got less pocket money than boys. It was a 6% gap, but it's obviously the beginning of the inequality, which has led to a 17% pay gap. And what's quite distressing actually is the fact that in 19 years the gap has increased by 1.3%. So it's really not declining at all. In terms of where Australia is, let's get these stats. Where Australia is internationally, Asia's actually got a much bigger gap than Australia. Thanks. And Australia is actually beaten by Italy, New Zealand and Spain in terms of the gap. It's much less in Italy. But South Korea has got the largest gap at 38.9%, and Japan. And I think that this is something, obviously, is a worldwide issue, and something that we can, when we eventually get it right, we can hopefully export this knowledge. So just in terms of where business is coming from, I think we really need to own this issue. You know, businesses are very independent. They're really sick of being told what to do by government. Paperwork's a huge issue. Like if I ask my members, the Real Estate Institute, what the biggest issue is, they would say paperwork and compliance. So just having one more thing, which was having to pay maternity leave or parental leave, was just another burden. And they wanted it shifted back to the government. They were happy to pay it, but it just became more forms to fill in. It was a 12-page form. So in the end, you know, I think we really need to look at what is generating the paperwork as well. So just in terms of the measurement side of it, that was discussed. I think that's probably the first step here, is to actually get some funding for research and find out which areas are the biggest problem, dealing with those areas, producing materials, some training, HR, and also training around recruitment, and ensuring that the businesses are able to easily download some guidelines about how to deal with this issue. When I talked to my members, I thought, well, I'll, discuss our industry so we can talk about that as an example. And really there's a blind spot there, because none of them sort of thought there was an issue. So when I explained there was, it was something that they were really trying to find out what the problem was. So we're really starting from the ground up, I think, with this basic education. Just looking at real estate, women are actually represented 48%, which is a high representation. So it's looking good. Then when you look at the types of employment, they're concentrated in property management. So that's really the lowest salaries are in property management. When you're looking at owners, it's quite similar to the general statistics in terms of women are actually 7% of owner, 15% of owner managers. and 7% of unincorporated enterprises. So, and men are 29% of owner-managers. So less women than men in those areas, and the areas of the highest salaries are more male-dominated. So we're starting to raise a bit of awareness in my industry just by talking about it to start with. Secondly, it's actually trying to raise awareness that there is this bias, be kind and say it's an unconscious bias to start with. I think it's important to get business on side, leave the big stick till later on, but at least maybe sort of focus on the fact that they're employing people who they relate to. They tend to be employing more males in the sales auctioneering area, and challenging them to start looking at different people in terms of employment, employing more young people, ethnically diverse, and definitely employing more women. I think the board diversity model is a really good one. And once we've got the data, we can hopefully look at setting up a website on this. So they're my comments. And I'd just like to introduce Ondina Gregoric, who we appointed as our business champion for last year. And that was an interesting process in itself, because I think we've had quite a few business champions, but none of them have been female. And wasn't hard to find one once we identified that we wanted a female. So there were many of them around. The COSBOA has got its own challenges in that area, but we've got 3 women on the board now. And we've found that once you get a critical momentum, like you've got 3 women, it's made a huge difference. We've got our own voting block, so I would advocate for moving beyond tokenism and actually getting a real critical level of women out there. So I'd like to introduce Ondina, who's actually a businesswoman, and she's run her own business, she's employed staff, and Ondina can talk about the reality of what it's like standing behind the counter. Here we go.
Thank you.